Cartel, my people, my babies, my dogs, what's going on with y'all boys, man? Y'all already know what time it is, man. It's your boy Golden Ghost, and welcome back to the Golden Ghost Cartel. And today I want to talk about something that you may have seen a resurgence of lately when it comes to DOA in the midst of its increase in popularity now, in comparison to the point where it was currently at not even 6 months ago. That is the Dead or Alive 7 thoughts and wish lists and ideas that you may or may not have seen floating around the zeitgeist. Now, me myself, I've always remained firm in my stance that we're going to hear something from the developers about a new DOA fighting game by the end of this year. And if they don't, well, then I guess I'm just going to be doing the hot chip challenge on stream, bro. And then, that's going to be my punishment for having delusions of grandeur. But I think I want to take my prediction a tad further. Not only do I believe we're going to hear something for the DOA fighting game, but I also believe that there is a high likelihood that DOA is going to make some type of approach in the similar vein as Virtua Fighter. I'm talking about come out with a big update for DOA 6 to build hype among the community while we wait for more information regarding a new Dead or Alive game. I believe this is the case because, for one, the amount of support that DOA has been getting from people who are outside this community and over the broader FGC is something of the likes of which we have never seen up to this point. Not just from other content creators, but also from various other platforms. Tampa never sleeps hosting a DOA tournament is something completely unprecedented. And yes, I understand that that is a large part, and thanks to Hoodless, shout out to the boy Hoodless. But a part of me, just a little part of me, believes that a key influence to making that decision be a yes would be the fact that something big for DOA 6 is on the horizon, and therefore instead of just announcing a new game, they want to bring eyes on the current game that's soon to be updated. That's just my theory, so take it with a grain of thought, take it with a grain of salt, but it makes perfect sense in my eyes for a bigger competitive circuit such as TNS to accept DOA into an FGC pocket if this is the case. It would also be really good since it would allow them time to implement things in the same vein, just like what VF is doing. Implement things into their game that are more standard and more in line with the current fighting game standards heading into a DOA 7, such as rollback and replay takeover, the basic bells and whistles that most modern fighting games have today. Honestly, I think that's just a great way to revive any dormant franchise in general, and I believe that TNS is the first domino to fall in something much bigger for DOA. And with that being the case, the popularity will rise up even further, and the DOA 7 think pieces will come even larger than it already has. Now, I made a video about what I think DOA 7 needs a long while ago, and although I'm not upset with that video, I'm not disappointed in that video. I have been thinking, and I've been speaking with people both on the casual and competitive side of things, and I wouldn't say that my takes have really deviated, but I think the better term is that they have been refined in a way to where I believe that these things will almost guarantee Dead or Alive's success for a new game, regardless if it's a member of the FGC or not. It will have the support of the hardcore and the casual DOA players, and it will be a success. Golden Ghost Cartel. So here's my take. Dead or Alive needs to go back to formula. A homecoming, if you will. There's a lot of takes you'll see out there that will tell you DOA needs to give fan service the backseat and focus primarily on engaging mechanics and interesting gimmicks. And while yes, the game needs those things, saying that DOA needs to pull back on the fan service and the breasts, the boobies, the ass, I'm sorry, there's no real nice way to say it. You don't understand that they tried this with DOA 6 already, and this was the first reason why the game got smoked. Let me run it down in a Spark Notes version. If you want my full thoughts on it, please check out my deep dive video. I went deep into that, and the whole, basically, I was theory crafting hard to come up with this hypothesis, but this is a pretty strong hypothesis as to what happened, that's built with just facts and deductive reasoning. But I will give you the Spark Notes version. DOA 6 on the promotion leading up to its release said they wanted to promote DOA primarily as a fighting game first and foremost, and the casual side of the fandom dismissed and abandoned it off the rip because of this. This hurt the sales drastically. The casuals make up for way more sales than the competitive side. That's one thing a lot of people tend to forget. We may be such a loud portion of the community, but we tend to forget how small we are in the grand scheme of things. The lack of performance in our game in comparison to the game that was released in the same window, Dead or Alive Extreme Scarlet, made the higher ups of Team Ninja or Koei Tecmo, whoever made this decision, decide that they need to win these fans back. They need to win the casuals back over to DOA6. And through some jacked up miscommunication, they decided to choose Evo as the place to try and win them back, thus creating the comp side being in stagnation, and then the DLC practices pissing off the rest of the people who still played the game. And when Team Ninja decided to issue a refund, they decided that that was the time to hang it up. And even more so, the Extreme Games currently is the only reason DOA isn't a relic at this point today. So this take objectively, as we've seen with DOA6, is just objectively incorrect. The idea shouldn't be to promote one over the other, and one takes the forefront and one takes the back seat. The idea should be to make a distinct balance between the two without making the other side of the fan base feel alienated. This is why I don't think that merging the fighting game with the Extreme Games will really work out too much as well, because, you know, on paper it would make sense to do so, but after speaking with Johnny about it on the Hot Takes video, even though it is absolutely possible, I feel like that's just going to be a monumental task, considering that if the Extreme Games do get absorbed in the DOA's fighting game system, or like into DOA through like a casual mode or something like that, there is a high likelihood that this will piss off the Extreme players and it'll make them feel alienated. And making the Extreme players feel alienated is the absolute last thing that Team Ninja wants to do, since Extreme is, for one, their biggest money maker, and the Extreme community is louder, more loyal, and have figures with high follower counts that carry their views as such, and some in the most radical way possible. But I'm not even gonna get too deep into that. Need I remind anyone what happened to Zachary when that man said, let's tone down the boobies just a little bit without completely getting rid of them? And seeing how the Extreme players reacted to that. Dead or Alive needs to balance out its horny and its fighting aspect in its marketing to where you can clearly see that both are there and one isn't overshadowing the other. But more importantly, I believe what really needs to happen and the real secrets about what needs to change about DOA going forward lies within the older games themselves. I'm talking about the core aspects of DOA, from the graphics and character designs to the triangle system and stage interactions. DOA will return to its former glory by going back to what made it glorified in the first place. Here's a quick little history lesson for those of y'all that don't understand just how enriched and ingrained DOA's core mechanics are to its identity, you know. And I spoke with a couple people about this, so that way, just to make sure I have all my facts straight, I spoke with Hoodless, I spoke with Ponton, I spoke with DB. I made sure that this is going to be very thorough. So here we go. Here's a quick little history lesson. Let's go back to when DOA was nothing more than essentially a VF clone with breasts on it, bro. Obviously the game was more than that, but you'll understand what I'm saying shortly. DOA 1 didn't have the core of DOA that we know and love today. The only thing that it had going for it was the building blocks of it. There are things in DOA 1 that I'm going to tell you right now, and it's going to make you have the lemon juice face. I promise you. Because in DOA 1, you couldn't even hold out a stun. You couldn't do combo stuns. Holding wasn't even a universal mechanic at the time. Some characters had defensive holds with quarter circle back, plus your designated hold button. Everything else was offensive holds. Oh, and how could I forget? If two holds connect that are offensive holds, it triggers a guard break animation. DOA 1 was so drastically different, but the building blocks slowly started getting pieced together over time. When DOA 1++ came to be, so did the critical system, so did the defensive holds. And string attacks didn't start to feel good until the Sega Saturn release of DOA 1, which we now know today is DOA 1 Ultimate. This refinement of the system mechanics continued throughout DOA 2, where specifically 2 received the refinements of DOA 3, with that being 4-way defensive holds and having a full free step system, which means these mechanics by the time that they reached this version had 5 years of cook time up to this point. This version that has all of these in DOA2 we know as DOA2 Ultimate, which is considered to be the best version of DOA to quite a ton of people within the hardcore fighting game part of our community. This system is chefed together by cooks that have had years upon years in the kitchen, so I think that it's important. No, I think that it's paramount that these systems are not deviated from in a future DOA game. And if we get a DOA6 update, I think it's important that they bring some part of that OG formula back. Because in DOA6, while there is some things that are back to formula, such as quick launching, you know, that quick launching was the thing from the older DOAs, the triangle system is compromised. Why worry about guessing and making proper reads on defense when you have a mechanic that can halt all momentum and reset the neutral with a meter that comes back so fast you can get it off multiple times in a single game? We will come back to the meter, but the major point that I'm making here is that if DOA wants to become successful again among the players, then they need to keep the core aspect of DOA's gameplay identity to heart and implement evolutions or mechanics that enhance these systems and not compromise them. A good example and another thing that I want to point out is DOA3, because DOA2U and DOA3 aren't very dissimilar from each other in the grand scheme. DOA3 was an evolution of two systems, stages, designs, and interactions while also implementing a fast pace in Flash. I think Flash is a very important thing to consider for a new game, especially because in this day and age, if a fighting game doesn't have at least one thing blowing up in your face, it's considered to be boring. But similar to the way that I see graphics, I don't think that this is something that Team Ninja will miss on when it comes to DOA. I should also note the way you play DOA 3 versus 2 is also pretty different. DOA 2 play is all about mix up, while DOA 3 play is about positioning, pressure, and overall movement. I want a DOA game in the future where we can do both. Moving on from DOA 2 and DOA 3, let's talk a little bit about DOA 4. While the core mechanics were established in the older versions up until 3, where it started to become more about evolution and establishment, DOA 4 takes an entirely different approach to its systems, and what you end up with is a high level hellscape. I've only played DOA 4 a handful of times, but if you ask anybody who's been around for the competitive DOA 4 scene, they will tell you that DOA 4 was a mess at high level. But despite it being hell for those who grinded it at high level, it was a complete paradise for casual players. Winner and loser stays, kumite, survival, all of these being online modes, by the way. Spectator mode, a casual friendly lobby system, almost like a chat room, and something that goes under the radar nowadays, voice chat. I think we underestimate how good voice chat is to a game in general. Despite how toxic it has the potential to be, the content you get from it, the friends you can make, and the memories and timeless moments you garner from just communicating with other people, it's an experience like no other. While DOA never got rid of the voice chat, I feel like the reason that we don't get that as much now is because the community is so small that, you know, we mainly just communicate through Discord now. It's easier to just hop in a Discord call with somebody that you play with instead of just hoping that you run into an interaction in a lobby, you know what I mean? Bring these casual aspects back. Bring back the avatar lobby system. Bring back online survival. I say take it a step further. Let's add some online time attack. Add places in this avatar lobby system where you can play older DOA games against other people in the lobby, and then implement proximity voice chat into these avatar lobbies as well. This will be a casual safe haven for people who don't even play fighting games often, and you know, people that just want to chat with their friends, let alone people who actually do want to play the game on top of that. This has been proven to work multiple times, even as recent as Street Fighter. Like, bro, imagine how much more Street Fighter lobbies will be packed if they could have a proximity chat and use their voice. Like, yeah, you'll find your assholes and you'll have your toxic moments, but you'll also build relationships and unforgettable memories by just putting yourself out there. And I believe not only is that something that would be good for a game with a lobby system, but I feel like that's also just helping add a layer of confidence I think this generation is starting to lack, bro. VR chat, but if you talk crazy, we can run them hands. Of course, there will also be text chat, but man, proximity chat, proximity voice chat in a lobby would be sick. Moving ahead to DOA 5. One thing that I forgot to mention to be added for the casual friendly modes will also be the online training mode, and this leads me into what DOA 5 can offer a new DOA and even an update for DOA 6 if it happens. You know, I'm not gonna sit here and be like bring back power blow or critical burst, because that would be too biased, and honestly that would be too easy. You know, instead I would like to use these and other mechanics to show the real beauty of DOA5. The constant setups, whether it be critical burst setups, stagger escape setups, power launch tech, power blow tech, ground game tech. If there's something that can't be understated about Dead or Alive 5, it's the sheer limitless amount of tech that you can find in that game. This is one of the major things that kept DOA5 tournaments interesting and what kept the game chugging along all the way up until DOA6. And what DOA6 did was kind of take some of that tech away, which a few people who are very fond of the finer mechanics in tech in 5 were left distraught by this, to the point where they didn't have it in to continue playing the game. One of the major things being the ground game, the sidestep, and the break hold that just holds everything. Since I already kind of touched on the break holds already, let's talk about the sidesteps in the ground game. In 5, you could basically force someone off the floor with damn near anything. You know, it took a bit of character lapping, but once you got it down, you could literally do a stun, launch, combo, drop the combo early into a hit that would hit them the moment they hit the ground and force them back up immediately. You know, and they're put in a defensive situation. It's some high level tech, but at the same time it's very oppressive depending on the character. Let's take Bayman for example. Bayman will literally put you in a setup to where if you don't force tech up from the combo, you're going to eat a ground throw and it still does nasty damage. But if you tech up, you're immediately having to force the block anyway. You're forced into a defensive situation anyway, because for whatever reason, with ground throw, Bayman still has mad plus frames on you. 6 decided to mitigate this by making tech setups require multiple hits and then have it be hyper specific from character to character. Some people want it to remain the same, while other people's want it to be completely reverted back to the way that it was in 5. I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle. You know, multiple hits to get a force tech sounds excessive, and I'm not against having multiple ways of force teching up the opponent. However, I think that it should only be lows that get the force techs off. A mid shouldn't be getting you up, and if you do tech up against other characters, you should be able to be rewarded for teching up against characters, bro. I shouldn't be getting launched by a grappler and then teching up to avoid the ground throw attack and still be minus a million, you know. And even if they do force tech you up, there should be enough frames to where you're able to clearly see it and perform counterplay with the triangle system. Mash if they throw, block or get a hold if they press, or sidestep attack out of it. Now 5 does leave enough of a window to where you're able to guess and make these decisions, but it's just camouflaged just well enough to where if you do this to somebody who isn't at the high level and doesn't understand what's going on the screen, they're going to be discombobulated to a point to where they don't know what's going on. They think you're going to be cheating in the game. That's why I say clear to the player. There should be a way for this to, if not be obvious to the casual player, it should be a way to at least make that a way for people to learn that that is a mechanic in the game and another layer to the game yet to be discovered by these players who don't know about the tech already. Speaking of sidestep attacks, that's the other peak concern. Even though it is throw punishable, the fact that you are not able to get a stun and instead it just resets to neutral, this is my bias talking, but it just don't feel right. It's a weird thing too, because there's a lot of things I like about the sidestep attack, but it's also things I don't like about it. In 5, your steps had to be very deliberate, but at the same time, if you were playing against somebody who just did combo strings all day, you couldn't really utilize stepping because the strings will realign even if they aren't tracking moves. 6 alleviated this by giving you some iframes so that, you know, to make sure if you do a sidestep attack and somebody's trying to press and it's not a tracking move, it's gonna work. You know, but at the same time, this is at the cost of the reward, because I feel like the most satisfying part of the step wasn't the step itself, but it was the attack that you get after stepping. Because once you get the hit after stepping, the hit stuns and it shifts all the momentum back into your favor. Getting steps off became more consistent in 6, but at the price of the reward you get for shifting momentum. And I think once again that can be something that can be met in the middle. Let it be where sidestep attacks give you a light hit stun, you know, where you got to actually confirm it. You know, you confirm it and then follow it up with something in order to get that intrinsic reward for getting the step and shifting the momentum. You know, they get one chance to guess, boom, into a launch. And then if it is blocked, make sure it's minus a million on block, so that way if you're playing somebody like, say you fighting Bass and he blocks your stuff, he is hitting you with the power bomb of doom. You know, that's your fault. You read it wrong. I feel like that's a good compromise. You know, if you get the read, you should be able to, you know, get the stun, shift the momentum, and confirm it, bro. Once again, this is all just assuming that DOA6 gets some sort of update leading up to DOA7, but I do think DOA7 could utilize this as well if they are considering reworking meter. That's a good segue to my final point for this video. And this, compared to everything else I said, is more of a tinfoil hat idea, but I'd be remiss not to mention this. If there is a new DOA, I'm not gonna lie, I have a feeling that meter is going to be there. I kind of feel like this also when it comes to the new VF. I feel like it's going to have some sort of meter, because just like all the other modern fighting games, whether it be 2D or 3D, now we all have some sort of flash or explosiveness to it now. I think VF and a potential new DOA is also going to follow suit with the current direction of implementing and preserving their meter mechanic systems. Outside of what I've already said, I don't really have a direct answer on how the meter mechanics could be used, so this will be more or less me spitballing. But I think, in my opinion, this could be a good potential hypothesis or something to build on that could be good for a meter system. And that would be like how meter burn works in 2D games. For example, in DOA you have moves with specific frame data and properties, you know, as with any fighting game, but then you could have specific versions of the move where if you press the meter button in between a certain string window, you can change the properties of the move and give you better frame data on block, or in combos make it to where it changes the properties for a different combo extender in different setups, you know. And I feel like this could open up the door for a whole new layer of tech to be unlocked for the new DOA, you know, using resources in order to unlock them tech setups that, you know, people know of back in the day that people love so much. Still feeling like you're playing DOA at the core, but then the game really begins to open up the moment that you start spending those resources. I feel like that's a good compromise if you want to keep the meter in, because the meter, like I said with the other mechanics of the game, if you want to make the game evolve, it can't be at the compromise of the core of the game, and I think that could be a good way to implement meter without completely compromising the triangle system. In the case of DOA6 specifically, if it were to get an update, maybe we could do something with Fatal Rush, you know, make it a more useful tool in combos at the cost of your meter. I don't know why Fatal Rush doesn't cost meter, considering that if you get hit by it, the only way that you can really get out is doing a break hold. If you're not doing that, you're just getting launched after a fatal stun. But that specifically, I haven't really thought about that much. It's just another option. If you were to ask me personally, I don't think 3D fighters should even have meter in the first place, but if this is the future that we're headed in, I think that this could be a decent workaround for it. Dead or Alive is having a new light shed on it like never before. TNS is putting in Attorney. FGC guys like Smug are streaming the game, trying it. And I know I just mentioned TNS, but it literally just dawned on me as I was editing this, bro. TNS is literally happening a day before the Dead or Alive anniversary, bro. I'd hate to be like, no, this ain't a coincidence by any stretch of the word, but man, if this is what I think it is, bro, this is an amazing shot, and I hope they take it. And overall, it just feels like the community is starting to return to form. So I believe it's only natural that we ask the game to return to form as well, right? Get in the comments and let me know if I'm hitting home base with this or not, you know. And if you enjoyed, don't forget to leave a like, comment, share with your friends, all that good stuff, man. And as always, subscribe for some more from the Golden Ghost Cartel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Deuces.